everyone! Today I wanted to talk about the 4 different ways I've made income with a music degree. When I was in college, I think a lot of my peers, and myself included, had no idea how we were going to make any money after school, but I think we were so focused on finishing our degrees that we didn't really think about it much. I also think that in school we learned a lot about music and performing, history, but we didn't actually learn about what we were supposed to do after we graduated and how we're supposed to find work. I think we probably used to joke about how we were not going to make any money as musicians, but really that's not very funny, and especially once I had my daughter, it was definitely not cute to have this idea of a struggling artist. Once we moved to LA and I was pregnant with our second baby, it was definitely not funny anymore. We moved to Los Angeles a little over 2 years ago, and it's a very expensive city to live in. After living here for about a year, we had maxed out our credit card and we had almost no money in our checking account. And at that point I said, this is a problem we need to address. And I got really serious about reading a lot of personal finance books and budgeting and trying to figure out how we could make this work. By this point, I already knew that I wanted to be an orchestral flutist, and I'd already taken about 15 auditions at that point. So I knew that it was expensive, and I did not want to feel limited in the auditions that I could take because I didn't have enough money. Once I realized this, I shifted my perspective a little. I realized that the jobs I was doing, which were not being an orchestral flutist, didn't necessarily mean that I wasn't pursuing my dream. It just was something that would support me in the meantime while I was auditioning. Once I saw those jobs as supporting the same goal, I was more than happy to have work and have the money to do the auditions that I wanted to do. The first job I'll talk about is my job as a church organist and choir director. I've held this position at 3 different churches, and I've been doing it for about 7 years now. The best thing about having a church job is that it's very consistent, which is rare among music jobs. It's also a performance job, so you get to perform every week a different set of music in front of a crowd that's going to be pretty supportive of you because they already know you and like you. I would say this has been one of my major sources of income since I started doing it. One of the great things about having a church job is that it teaches you musical leadership. A lot of times you'll have members in your choir that are actually older than you, and you'll have to gain confidence in telling them what to do because you're the musical expert. And I think that's given me a lot of confidence in my own musicianship. You may think I can't do that job because I don't play the piano and I can barely pass my piano proficiency. But I didn't really play the piano growing up. Actually, I did not play the piano growing up. I took my first piano class at the end of high school and then basically just practiced in college. Turns out that I really liked playing the piano, so I practiced it a lot, and I would try to learn extremely slowly the accompaniments to the flute music that I was learning. If you have interest in piano and you like it, even if you're not good at it at this point, this job is definitely worth a consideration. Because the other thing about church jobs is that almost every church has a service on Sunday morning, and so they all need their own pianists. So I actually see a lot of jobs posted for church pianist, church organist, music director, because there's a fairly high demand for that job. I'm definitely not the world's best organist, and I'm basically completely self-taught. I did have to struggle so hard when I started my first job because I only played organ for the church, but I'd never played organ before. So I taught myself to use the pedals. I had to practice a lot every day to feel prepared for the Sunday service. But it turns out that playing the organ is not something that a lot of pianists really want to do. So the fact that I'm willing to play the organ, even though I'm not the world's best pianist, definitely gives me a competitive edge with other people that are applying to this kind of job. The next job I'll talk about is teaching lessons. This is a pretty straightforward and obvious choice. I started teaching when I was in grad school. I just had a couple of students that would come to my apartment, and that was how I got started. The good thing about teaching from your own place, your own house, apartment, studio, is of course that you get the full whatever they pay you. It does take more administrative work, so you have to schedule the lessons, keep track of payments, and also be in charge of marketing yourself and advertising your services. Where I currently work is a music school that offers a bunch of different kinds of lessons. This is good because you don't have to look for students, they're given to you because the organization is in charge of finding the students, advertising, scheduling. All you have to really do is show up at the right time and teach the lessons. Of course, this gives you lower pay because that organization is going to be taking some of that money because they have to pay for rent, they have to pay for their own costs, and you'll have less control over your schedule. I will also say that most of the private teaching I do right now, and really since I started teaching, has been beginning piano. I think this has the highest demand as far as music lessons, and if you can teach beginning piano along with your own instrument, that will really give you a lot of opportunities for work. The next thing I'll talk about is jobs that are not actually music jobs. So just because you have a music degree doesn't mean that you can only do music. Just because you want to be a professional musician doesn't mean that you can't do jobs that are outside of music. I used to think that if I wasn't doing only music work, that I wasn't a professional musician, but that's not true. It's really hard to say how people get from college to their successful music career because everyone does it really differently. All through grad school, I worked at a bakery that was nearby because I didn't have a car at that point, and I would start work at 5:30 in the morning. I would finish by noon, and then I'd go to classes or rehearsals. I would barely stay awake, but I did it. I'm not necessarily recommending that you do this, especially if you don't need to, because I think I did lose out on a lot of practice time and focus that I could have had on music. On the other hand, I did gain a lot of really important skills while I was working at this job. The main one was the ability to talk to people. When I first started this job, I felt really awkward when customers came in because I didn't really know what to say to them. I didn't know how to small talk or make people feel comfortable. But after working there for almost 4 years, I felt like anyone that walked in, I could talk to them and we could have a pleasant conversation, which was major growth from when I first started. I found this skill to be so useful so many times in my just life in general, and definitely in my career. Last summer, because I was really interested in finance and budgeting, I applied to a job called Finance Assistant Cashier at the Hollywood Bowl. Basically just counted cash from the parking and kept track of it, prepared it for deposit. It was a very laid back job, and the best part was I got access to comp tickets for basically all the shows I cared about, which were the classical concerts, and I also got to go watch the orchestra after I was done with work. So I got to see a lot of awesome music last summer. It was also really interesting to see the behind the scenes way that a large arts organization like the LA Phil runs. The Hollywood Bowl is a seasonal job, so after that finished, I was looking for more work because I was anticipating taking a lot of auditions in 2020, which I did take 5 out of 6 that I was planning before coronavirus all happened. So I started looking for another job, and I ended up getting a job at a nearby cafe. A lot of skills overlapped with the bakery job that I had before, and I also learned how to use an espresso machine and make lattes and cappuccinos, so that was really fun. This is a minimum wage job, but because we also got tips and they were pretty good, I ended up making per hour almost the same amount that I was making teaching. The next thing I want to talk about are gigs, which I think are for me the least lucrative of the ways that I've made money with a music degree. First, as a flutist, I've played weddings and funerals and parties, which can be very well-paid events, but also hard to predict. Most of these things I got through family or friends, and at that point I didn't really get the hang of marketing and how to advertise, so it was pretty inconsistent and it wasn't something that I could rely on. It was just something that I got now and then. You can get paid quite a bit for doing a wedding, funeral, or a party, but keep in mind that it can be a lot of music to prepare sometimes, depending on the event, and also a lot of back and forth with the client. The other gigs that I've done have been at restaurants, bars, and cafes. I played some flute, but this was mostly with the Peruvian chicha band that I played with. These gigs were often pretty low paying. I think we were pretty happy if we each got $100, but this would be for a pretty long gig, and that didn't include any of our rehearsal time or travel. When you add it all up, it's really not that much. I did some of the booking for a while, and it's very time consuming and not that fun to be emailing places to ask for a gig and then not get paid that much. And we basically ended up stopping Los Patos because it was a lot of work and just not worth it. I definitely think there's nothing wrong with doing some jobs that are not music related, especially if you know that it's serving your larger career goals. Because I saw my job at the cafe as being a means to do all of the auditions that I wanted to do, I was always happy to go to work, and I also had really cool coworkers, so I didn't mind doing the job at all. I actually think it's really interesting to talk to people who are not musicians sometimes, because I think we can sort of get in our own little world and sometimes get a little out of touch. Everyone's skill set and career goals are different. You might as well just try a job if you think you might be interested in it, and you never know, you might be good at it, and it might uncover some other strengths that you didn't know you had, or teach you some new skills that you don't know are going to be useful. I hope that gave you some ideas of how you can make money with a music degree. Let me know if you have any questions in the comments below. If you want to keep seeing my videos, please subscribe, or you can follow me on Instagram at Elise Hokamp. Thank you so much for watching this video, and good luck!